In a world where a mother's love is often considered the most sacred and unconditional, the case of Kathy and Jennifer Bush presents a chilling contradiction, a twist tale that begs the question of the darkest depths the human mind can reach. The psychological analysis of this case offers an intriguing window into a mind that defies our most basic understanding of motherly love. The story begins with the birth of Jennifer Bush in 1985, a seemingly happy and healthy little girl who would soon become the center of a horrifying and complicated saga. The relationship between Jennifer and her mother, Kathy, will serve as a catalyst for a deeper understanding of a rare and controversial psychological phenomenon, Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy, also known as factitious disorder imposed on another, FDIA. Before diving into the complexities of this case and the psychological mechanisms that may have driven Kathy to her actions, have you ever wondered what goes on inside the mind of a criminal? Or why some people seem to be so confident and comfortable? At Wicked Psychology, we explore these questions and more, delving into the complexities of the human mind and behavior. Just like the mind, your wardrobe can play a significant role in how you feel. Elite Apparel's ultimate comfy shorts are designed to empower people to feel comfortable and confident, both inside and out. With a flexible elastic waistband and side slits for increased mobility, Elite shorts are the perfect blend of comfort and style. Elevate your wardrobe and your mindset with Elite Apparel's ultimate comfy shorts. Receive 15% off with the code 15WICKED at checkout. That's 15WICKED. You can find the link in the description below. It is critical to establish a foundational understanding of Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy. This disorder is characterized by a caregiver, often a mother, fabricating or inducing illness in a person under their care to gain attention, sympathy, or control. The caregiver is fully aware of their actions, and the harm they inflict is deliberate. Munchausen Syndrome by Proxy is a challenging diagnosis, as it often goes undetected for years, with the victims suffering greatly at the hands of their supposed caregivers. Returning to the case at hand, Jennifer's medical journey began with an array of common childhood ailments, such as respiratory problems and ear infections. However, as time progressed, her health deteriorated at an alarming rate, with doctors unable to identify an underlying cause. As Jennifer's medical problems continued to escalate, it would be reasonable to assume that Kathy, as her mother, would feel increasingly desperate and overwhelmed. However, the intricate web of lies and manipulation that would eventually unravel reveals a far more sinister reality. It is 1985 in Coral Springs, Florida. A beautiful baby girl named Jennifer Bush was born to a loving family. Her mother, Kathy, and her father, Craig, were ecstatic to welcome their first daughter after having 2 boys. Jennifer is the dream child Kathy had always wanted, and her birth marked the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. As Jennifer grew, she seemed to be a happy and healthy child. However, not before long, she started to experience a series of health issues. Respiratory problems, ear infections, and diarrhea plagued the young girl, and her parents took her to see a pediatrician. Despite the doctor's best efforts, they couldn't identify the underlying cause of her deteriorating health. Eventually, Jennifer was diagnosed with a rare immune disorder, requiring her to have an IV pump implanted permanently into her chest. Even with this treatment, her health continued to decline. Seizures, severe abdominal pain, and an inability to keep food down added to her list of ailments. At the age of 3, Jennifer was put on the anti-seizure drug Tegretol, and by age 5, she needed a feeding tube implanted into her stomach. By the time she was 7, she had been diagnosed with a rare infection, polymicrobial sepsis. As Jennifer's health worsened, Kathy quit her job and took up a position as an office manager at her daughter's pediatrician office. This allowed her to have full access to Jennifer's medical files and her doctor. Kathy also reached out to local charities and community members for financial assistance, and Jennifer became a local celebrity. The young girl, always smiling, was featured in newspapers and on TV, met the Florida Marlins baseball team, and even traveled to DC with her mother to meet then First Lady Hillary Clinton. The following clip is Jennifer reading part of a letter she wrote to Hillary.
I am giving you also this t-shirt so when you go jogging, you can wear it.
Kathy became a vocal advocate for healthcare reform, noting the difficulties her family faced in choosing between groceries and medical bills. They relied on charities and Medicaid for support, while at the same time, they enjoyed resort vacations and purchased a new motorcycle and sports car. In 1991, the staff at the Coral Springs Medical Center, where Jennifer was frequently admitted, began noticing red flags. They observed punctured or tampered IV lines, inconsistencies in Jennifer's symptoms and diagnosis, and Kathy's insistence on additional tests and procedures. Concerned, they approached Dr. Eli Newberger for guidance. After examining the staff's concerns and Jennifer's medical records, Dr. Newberger suggested that Kathy may have Munchausen Syndrome by proxy. He believed this disorder might have been the driving force behind Kathy's alleged medical abuse of Jennifer. He alerted the Child Protective Services (CPS) of his suspicions. Dr. Newberger also recommended that the hospital conduct an investigation. However, Jennifer's family sued the hospital, leading them to drop their inquiry. In April 1995, an anonymous nurse at another hospital where Jennifer was frequently treated contacted the child abuse hotline. She reported witnessing Kathy tampering with Jennifer's feeding tubes and IV lines and noted discrepancies in Jennifer's drug levels. The nurse also observed that Jennifer's condition would suddenly worsen just before she was scheduled for discharge, often coinciding with Kathy's visits. The nurse feared for Jennifer's life. The tip led Florida state prosecutors and CPS to launch an investigation that lasted a year. Through their inquiry, they found multiple medical professionals who had either witnessed Kathy tampering with Jennifer's treatments or had seen suspicious activity in Jennifer's medical charts. One particular incident raised eyebrows. Even after Jennifer's doctor had put a hold on her medication, her blood levels of the drug continued to spike to near lethal levels for 3 weeks. One reason Kathy was able to get away with this for so long was due to her connections. From taking her daughter's story public, she garnered attention from powerful people, and the prosecution had to be sure that their case was airtight to take her down. They knew since Kathy would be backed by so many people nationally that they could only arrest Kathy once they had enough evidence and witnesses to overtake her influential circles she had found herself in. On April 15, 1995, police arrested Kathy Bush, charging her with aggravated child abuse and Medicaid fraud. Jennifer was removed from school that day and placed in foster care. Up to that point, she had been hospitalized 200 times and undergone nearly 40 surgeries, as well as 1,819 non-surgical treatments. However, after being separated from her mother, Jennifer's feeding tube was removed, and her numerous illnesses and symptoms seemed to vanish. Kathy's trial began on July 20th, 1999. The judge ruled that the prosecution could not introduce any evidence or testimony related to Munchausen Syndrome by proxy, as the diagnosis was still somewhat controversial. Instead, the prosecution had to prove that Kathy had committed medical abuse on Jennifer. Kathy's defense was that she was a concerned mother, doing everything in her power to care for her sick child. She claimed that the accusations of medical abuse were revenge from doctors and nurses for her healthcare activism. It is interesting to note that Munchausen Syndrome by proxy is the one mental disorder that is used by prosecutors to find motive for abuse. While most other mental disorders are brought up in court by the defense to diminish the responsibility of the crime for their client, the defendant. Essentially, Munchausen is used as an attack in court rather than a shield or defense like other mental disorders. The prosecution called upon dozens of doctors and medical professionals from various hospitals that had treated Jennifer. They testified about mysterious symptoms that only Kathy witnessed, falsified medical histories and diagnosis, tampering with medical equipment, unexplained drugs in Jennifer's system, and recurring infections consistent with contaminated feeding tubes and catheters. They also spoke about incidents where Jennifer's condition improved, only to worsen again after her mother's visits. The doctors caring for Jennifer at the time of the trial also testified that she had been healthy since being removed from her mother's care. A nurse testified that she would hear Jennifer saying, "No, I don't want that," or "No more." But when the nurse would enter the room, she would not see anything out of the ordinary, and Kathy would provide some explanation of why Jennifer was saying those remarks. One time, a nurse recalled Jennifer telling her, "I'm having a seizure," but Jennifer was clearly not. Kathy had called the nurses in on multiple occasions, telling them that Jennifer could not return home because she just experienced a seizure when she did not. Jennifer's whole life has been lies and full of attention, so the fact that she would lie about seizures herself isn't all that surprising, as this was normal behavior in her world. It got to a point where Jennifer would start wheezing, and yet there was no respiratory abnormalities found. If someone is told they're having a difficult time breathing, then they are likely to become more aware of their involuntary actions and hyper-focus on them. This could have led Jennifer to internalize the lies and start displaying the breathing difficulties her mother was telling her that she had. Kathy obtained a specialized wheelchair for Jennifer. She sometimes brought it into the hospital. However, Jennifer had no mobility problems. On October 7, 1999, after 7 hours of deliberation, the jury found Kathy guilty. She was sentenced to 5 years in prison, followed by 5 years of probation. During her final sentencing hearing, a CPS caseworker read a letter from Jennifer, who expressed anger and grief when thinking about her mother.
Your Honor, I would like to share some thoughts about my experiences over the past 15 years of my life. The first thought I would like to share with you is the treatment from my mother, Kathy Bush. When I think of my mom these days, I get very angry inside. I think back to the times when I was little, sick in the hospital, not knowing what to do. When I first got taken away when I was 8 years old, I thought it was something I did wrong, not knowing it was something worse. I thought I was the one being punished instead of my mother. It's almost been 7 years, and I've been having to live the whole bunch of grief, and she's pretty much having a normal life.
Kathy continued to profess her innocence.
I never harmed my daughter physically, emotionally, psychologically, or medically. I love Jennifer with all my heart and all my soul.
Since Kathy was losing the positive attention she had worked so hard to receive, she realized she needed to flip the script. Initially, she used her daughter to gain sympathy, but now since this isn't working anymore, she is attempting to turn the sympathy on herself. Kathy claims that she does not believe in Munchausen Syndrome by proxy, and she is being mislabeled. She has made herself the victim of the entire ordeal.
I don't believe Munchausen Syndrome by proxy exists. I believe mothers harm their children, fathers harm their children. I believe nurses harm children. But I don't believe because you're a loving parent who advocates for your child that you should be labeled or branded. If you had a child like Jennifer who lost her health insurance, wouldn't you move heaven and earth to do everything humanly possible to see that your child's needs were met?
Kathy was taken to Gadsden Correctional Facility in Quincy, Florida. She chose to voluntarily terminate her parental rights to Jennifer rather than drag her family through another ordeal. She served only 3 years before being granted parole in 2005. In 2004, Kathy began writing to Jennifer from prison. The two corresponded by mail, with a therapist supervising their communication. Jennifer, who was struggling with the trauma of being in the foster care system, found solace in reconnecting with her mother. When Jennifer turned 18, she requested that the prohibition against contact with Kathy be lifted. It was granted. At 27, Jennifer maintained a close relationship with her mother and insisted that Kathy had never abused her. She believed her mother had been a victim of hysteria, unfairly labeled with the controversial diagnosis. Jennifer's current health condition remains undisclosed, but she appears to be healthy and happy. In order to gain a deeper understanding of the psychological mechanisms at play in the case of Kathy and Jennifer Bush, it is critical to examine the motivations that drove Kathy's actions. The concept of Munchausen Syndrome by proxy, or factitious disorder imposed on another, provides a framework for understanding the potential reasons behind Kathy's behavior. Munchausen Syndrome by proxy is a mental disorder characterized by a caregiver fabricating, exaggerating, or inducing symptoms in a person under their care, often a child, to gain attention or sympathy for others. In the case of Kathy Bush, her seemingly inexplicable determination to subject Jennifer to numerous medical tests, procedures, and surgeries can be seen as an expression of her desire for attention and validation. By positioning herself as the devoted, self-sacrificing mother, tirelessly fighting for her child's well-being, Kathy was able to garner praise, support, and sympathy from others. While it is impossible to know precisely what drove her to harm her own child, exploring the potential contributing factors can provide valuable insights into the human psyche and the mechanisms that may contribute to such a heinous act. One possible factor to consider is the desire for attention and sympathy from others. In a world where human connection is incredibly elusive, the allure of being seen as a caring mother facing insurmountable odds could be a potential force. As Jennifer's medical bills mounted, Kathy found herself in the spotlight. The attention she received as a mother struggling to care for her sick child could have been intoxicating, driving her to maintain the facade of a loving, devoted caretaker, even as her actions directly contradicted this image. Another potential factor at play could be Kathy's perceived lack of control over her own life. As she quit her job, leading to the loss of her medical insurance, the mounting medical bills, and the reliance on charities and Medicaid, Kathy may have felt increasingly powerless. In orchestrating Jennifer's illnesses and manipulating her medical care, Kathy may have sought to regain a sense of control and mastery over her circumstances. Additionally, the concept of secondary gain may be relevant in understanding Kathy's motivation. Secondary gain refers to the benefits a person derives from an undesirable situation or behavior, often unconsciously. In this case, Kathy may have experienced secondary gain through the sympathy, support, and attention she received as Jennifer's devoted mother. This secondary gain could have reinforced her harmful behavior, making it even more challenging to break the cycle of abuse. Kathy likely started with one lie and then found herself in a web of lies that escalated to a point where she could not stop. Another possible explanation for Kathy's actions is that she suffered from a form of narcissism. Narcissistic individuals often have an inflated sense of self-importance and a deep need for admiration and validation from others. By positioning herself at the center of attention in Jennifer's medical struggles, Kathy may have been seeking to satisfy her narcissistic needs. In this context, her actions can be seen as a manifestation of her desire to maintain the image of a heroic, self-sacrificing mother, which ultimately came at the expense of her daughter's health and well-being. The relationship between Kathy and Jennifer following Kathy's release from prison provides further insight into the complex psychological dynamics at play in this case. Despite the abuse she suffered, Jennifer chose to reconnect with her mother and maintain that Kathy never abused her. This decision can be understood through the lens of attachment theory. Individuals form strong emotional bonds with their caregivers, even when those caregivers are abusive and neglectful. In the case of Jennifer, her attachment to Kathy may have been reinforced by the trauma she experienced as a result of the medical abuse. The desire to maintain a connection with her mother, despite the harm inflicted upon her, may be seen as an attempt to make sense of her traumatic experiences and to find a sense of stability in an otherwise chaotic and unpredictable environment. From a young age, children are taught to love and respect their parents, which can create a deep emotional bond that can be difficult to break, even in the face of abuse. Many children may feel a sense of loyalty or responsibility toward their parents, especially if they are the primary caregivers or have been taught to prioritize their family above all else. This can lead to the sense of guilt or shame when the child considers reporting the abuse or seeking help. Finally, the trauma and stress of being in an abusive situation can have profound effects on the child's mental and emotional well-being, which may contribute to a sense of helplessness and dependency on the abusive parent. Initially, Jennifer agreed that her mother inflicted the illness on her, but years later, she recanted her accusations. It is possible that Jennifer felt that her mother's prison sentence was her fault, and that it was her fault that she was sent to foster care. This misplaced guilt could have been what led Jennifer and Kathy to reunite and become closer than ever. Jennifer's brother described his sister's and mother's relationship and recounted that it was not of a typical mother-daughter relationship, especially given the young nature of Jennifer at the time.
Describe your relationship that your mother had with Jennifer.
They were best friends. They did anything and everything together.
Is there anyone that you would allow to hurt your sister?
Never.
Do you think Jennifer knew her mother was harming her? What do you think was the leading cause of Kathy's extreme measures to keep her daughter ill? Thank you to our Patreons. We really appreciate your support. We want to give a big thank you to Dark Entries, Nexus, Big Pepperoni Pizza, Chrissy R, Catherine D, Tony S, and Jennifer S. Feel free to join our Patreon today. Link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and join us next time when we explore the psychological maze of some of the most wicked people.